Hey guys, welcome back to another video of Galaxy After Man. Today we are going to be talking about the Hive, Part 9. So, let's get right on into it. I think this should be a good one. As the battle for Rafton rages on, the idea of defeat would turn into a fact, as Admiral Warrior 87 and his fleet would be vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Yet through sheer resilience, as the battle continued for 1 hour, then 2 hours, and finally reached into its second day, the Hive fleet would hold its ground against all odds. Thanks to the advanced swarm-based tactics and sheer strategy, the battle was far from over. While Admiral Warrior 87 knew he can't win, he also knew he could inflict great damage on the enemy. Thanks to him and his fleet, as the battle reached its third day, nearly 137 enemy warships would be destroyed. Yet, it would come at the cost of 3 Empress Sword warships and 15 Queen Dagger warships, all Mark III. Yet, however, all 5 of the Mark II Queen Dagger warships would be lost. However, as this battle still continues, it would shock everyone as it reaches its third day. But this would be the final day. In time, Swarm 38 would be whittled down until all that remained was the capital ship with Admiral Warrior 87. When the recording of the ship's final last stand spread across the Hive, as the ship burst into flames and exploded in the vacuum of space, the flames of anger in the hearts of the nation would turn into a ferocious blast of determination in order to win this war. So even though the first battle, the Battle of Rafton, was lost, along with the whole system, this war was far from over. Within a day after the defeat at Rafton, the Hive had fully mobilized and alerted all its military forces. This war, which would be given the name the Great Wicklar War, would only unite the Hive even more than it already had been before. And it would be just in time, as above the planet Uptinian 4, many yellow rifts would rip apart the sky, and endless numbers of enemy warships would pour out. The defense fleet of the planet, known as Swarm 12, commanded by Admiral Warrior 6, would without hesitation engage the enemy. While the Hive fleet would once again be greatly outnumbered, the famous words of Admiral Warrior 87 would spark hope inside the hearts of all. It's a damn good day to fight for freedom. This simple sentence would become a rallying cry for all within the nation. As the defense fleet battled for hours, holding its place and inflicting critical blows at the enemy, the fighting would go on for hours. However, victory in space was not something that could be won, as while in the beginning of the battle, the Hive fleet inflicted devastating damage and destroyed many enemy ships. Yet, within 4 hours of the battle, more yellow rifts would open in space, and so many more enemy warships would pour out randomly into the battlefield, with at times even ramming right into Hive ships, simply destroying both vessels. So now, the battle in space has been lost. And now, with Uptinian 4 being a fully colonized planet, a ground invasion would begin. But as the battle raged on in space, this time, this very precious time, was not wasted, as General Warrior 35 would take this opportunity given to him in order to ready his forces to defend the planet. With Uptinian 4 being mostly a warm and damp planet with endless fields of oily and muddy soil that grows countless species of funguses, trench warfare would be seen as the best way to defend the planet. And when the battle began, in the muddy, spore-filled fields of the world, as the Hive was fully entrenched within their designated trenches, the battle would be one of confusion. As the Confederation of Wicklar troops stormed the trenches, it was noticed they were doing so without tactic, no discipline, and most of all, no order. They would simply just charge headfirst into the firing lines of the Hive. As the body count grows nearly on a one-sided basis, the losses on the Confederation of Wicklar would cause confusion within the Hive. How can a military and a species that claims to have a soul and value life simply let their forces perish like this? Yet as the battle reached its 7th day, the Hive began to suffer greater losses now. They would begin to be simply overran by the superior numbers of their enemy, as hostile forces rush and swarm into the trenches. With even greater numbers, the heat bugs would be forced to retreat deeper into their hives. In time, the first Hive city would become under attack. However, it would seem they were unprepared to face the ruler of this Hive city. Deep under the planet's surface, within the miles and miles of underground dark tunnels only illuminated by glowing blue funguses, she lies in waiting. Yet as the enemy pushes forward through the tunnels, they would meet her face to face. An empress would be in command of this Hive city, and she was not happy. Her and her royal guards would tower over the enemy. Their vicious and deadly attacks, using their bare hands, claws, teeth, bladed legs, and even bladed heads, would inflict great losses to the enemy troops. In fact, the enemy forces would retreat and leave the tunnels altogether, only to be followed by the enraged Empress and her royal guards, and any remaining Hive forces that were picked up along the way. They all would push back the enemy out of the city, sending them running in fear as the battle Uptinian force shifts back to the favor of the Hive. This world, however, would not be the only one in danger. Soon, without warning, yellow rifts in space open, and the Confederation of Wicklar's warships would attack many worlds. Sosta 3, Danny B5, Wanya Prime, Nunus 2, and Bong Targi's Citadel, and many other of these worlds belonging to the Hive would become under attack, all at the same time. These, at first space-based battles, would be then grinding and bloody, as neither side was willing to give in to the other. And once when, unfortunately, the Hive inevitably lost the space-based battle, a bloody ground invasion took place on all these worlds. All across the nation, on every form of communication, the enemy would mock and insult the Hive, demanding that the demon heat bugs surrender and yield to the greater nation of Wicklar. If we surrender now and resist fighting anymore, our species will be used as slave labor forces and be treated relatively well, given the fact heat bugs have no soul nor rights. This comment would enrage the Queen Mother. It's even said that she let out a primal, fearsome roar one that has not been heard since the days of our ancestors when they were animals. As the battles raged on across the nation, it would become very clear that the enemy fleets only have an advantage due to the sheer amount of warships they have, with only overwhelming numbers able to break through the Hive's defenses. But it would be at the cost of many of their own ships. And when ground invasions are launched, their troops are unfocused, unable to really hold up against the fearsome warriors that they face. With their species being smaller and weaker than our normal warrior class troops, they would be simply grabbed, then ripped apart. Our troops would use claws, teeth, bladed legs, and their famous bladed heads in order to inflict as much brutal damage as they could in order to demoralize the enemy. And it would seem to work. The enemy would oftentimes run off screaming in fear, falling back, and at times even surrendering, and their prisoners would be treated well, taken to jails, awaiting to be prosecuted for their crimes, to be shown as an example to all. As the war continued, another fact would become clear. Our weapons would do a great deal of damage against them. Our standard issue spike launcher rifle Mark V would work more than just well. The sharp fungus projectile spike fired from the rifle would rip right through their armor that, in truth, was only designed really to defend from plasma-based attacks. Our spiked-based weapons were, in fact, designed in order to punch through our own thick exoskeletons in order to hit the more vulnerable parts further within us. But now these weapons work great against the soft flesh of these mammal-based invaders. After a little over a year of fighting on 27 worlds, the war would be seemingly hit a metal wall. It's widely believed, and in truth hoped, that the Confederation of Wicklar is running out of warships, as they are no longer attacking new planets, but rather trying to invade and capture existing worlds they have already won in orbit above. This war is in truth grinding both nations' resources down to bare bones. Yet not a single planet has truly fallen. The Hive remains strong. Our grand force would hold on to our territory, every last inch of fungus-based dirt, through a mix of fearsome trench warfare, surprising guerrilla warfare, overwhelming swarms with pinpoint tactics, and simply just out-clevering and out-strategizing the enemy. All these have allowed the Hive to hold on to its territory, but has literally driven invaders off-world many times during this war due to these advantages that the Hive seems to be the only ones to possess, with advanced strategy. But these victories would be short-lived, as every time the enemy would return with more troops, and the ground invasion would only begin again and again, yet every time it would result in the same ending, a victory for the Hive. With the war now reaching its second year of brutal fighting, members of the galactic community would ask during Senate meetings on the progress of the war. The Confederation of Wicklar's newly elected senator named Keo would explain grand stories of how his people are fighting bravely on the ground, telling stories of heroes rising above the call of duty and service and bravely fighting the demons of the Hive. Continuing, he talks about the victories in space being slaughters for the lower heat bugs, as they can do nothing but lose against the greater might of Wicklar. Keo even goes as far as saying his people would provide mercy to their heat bug enemies who surrendered, by providing the wounded with food, water, medicine, and fair treatment. Yet as Plactus hears all this, none of it is true. So the heat bug senator would take to the floor and explain the true status of the war. He tells of how his people, the so-called cold-blooded, soulless demons, would be in truth winning the ground-based wars, and their brave warriors, thanks to the tactical genius of their higher commanders such as empresses, queens, the Queen Mother herself, admirals, brave generals, would win victory after victory. And the so-called slaughters in space would only be due to the abundance of Wicklar warships, most of which would be destroyed in the fighting. As usual, the Heatbug Senator would be laughed at and mocked. So Plactus would offer to show literal video proof of his claims, and to show the horrors of war that the Wicklar nation is doing to his people, going on to even say that the so-called fair treatment surrendering troops would receive is nothing but a flat-out lie, and the horrors they are inflicting upon surrendering Hive members, as few as they may be, is cruel and outright evil. Yet even in the face of literal hard evidence of war crimes and the horrors that the Wicklar nation is doing, the Senate would deny Plactus's request to show this proof, as they say it's too insignificant and not important that they should return to the real pressing matters of this galactic community. And so it was. They moved on to more important topics, as they say. However, in time, as the war reaches its third year of fighting, the construction of Merrick's salvation would be finished, and with a matter of hours, the ship, along with many Empress Sword warships, would all take forth into space to join the greater war and usher in a new age of fighting. First, the planet of Wanya Prime. Then, many others, all liberated, as Wicklar's fleet would be taken by surprise at this ship and its massive fleet. So victory in space, for the first time, can truly be said has been claimed by the Hive. Yet the question still burns. Will this be enough to win the war? As the days go on, countless ambushes would be inflicted upon Merrick's salvation and the accompanying fleet. Yet, even being outnumbered 25-1, Merrick's salvation remains standing strong. Even with the Confederation of Wicklar literally opening rifts and ramming their own capital ships into the massive Mother Spears-class warship, nothing would stop it from claiming victory in the name of the Hive. To help show this vessel as a symbol of the nation, it would be tarped with many massive Hive flags in order to truly show off its power. Time after time, battle after battle, world after world, this ship would claim nothing but absolute victory. But still, the war is far from over.